Hello, this orientation video discusses how to document field experience hours as a part of your Recovery Residence Manager training. Field experience is a really key part of self-development because we can conceptualize concepts and they can be eye-opening, but really to master and embody skills, we need to implement them. We need to maybe fumble, learn from our mistakes, then problem solve and celebrate our successes. And rather than do this in isolation, it's great to have peer support. That's why we, in the Recovery Residence Manager training, we have created this community of practice where you get to meet other persons that are in the Recovery Residence Manager field, as well as I get to meet them online. You'll get to meet them at the retreat. Um, so that you're not having to do this in isolation. And if this sounds a lot like the recovery process, it's because it is. And that's exactly why we designed this training and the curriculum that way, because we want it to be reflective of what recovery looks like. Remember, recovery is a holistic and person-driven process that lasts a lifetime. So one of the biggest skills that we can cultivate in our residents and in ourselves is the concept of personal growth and development. There are many, many ways to do that, and we're going to be looking at some of them as a part of this training. So you may recognize this guy by living in some of your residences. It's a person that has one foot out the door. And so many people come to our recovery residences that way. So one of the things that we encourage them to do is develop a person-driven recovery plan. And a question you might pose to this gentleman is, so what is it that you want to do while you're here, living in the recovery residence, that's going to help you do blank, and really let that individual kind of talk about what they want to do. And it really starts getting them to think about how they want to use that time and use the peer support to develop their skills towards recovery. And while they start getting in the groove, you can look at how do you develop them as leaders and talk to them about, so what do they want to develop from a leadership standpoint that helps them in life and helps them be a major part of cultivating recovery within the household. So just like we do that with our residents, we can do that for ourselves as resident managers. And really it's reflecting that whole recovery process. Self-development as an example of what it means to be a person in recovery. So we're looking at self-development, getting ongoing support, and also having a plan that drives you forward. So what does that plan look like? You're creating the plan. We're not spoon feeding you a plan around your recovery residence manager development. I mean, the whole reason that you were attracted to this training is because you want to learn something. So a plan could look like, doing a self-assessment and identifying your priorities, looking at, so what is your measurements of success going to be? Having your support team that cheerleads you along the way or problem solves with you. Also figuring out, so how often are you going to look back and reflect and review yourself, and then also, how are you going to celebrate your wins? We're going to talk a lot more in detail about this at the recovery retreat, at the Recovery Residence Manager retreat. But we wanted to give you kind of a head start in getting your brain around, why is it that we're requiring these field hours to be documented? So let's drill down even further and give you an example. So here are the different steps of that plan, and these are merely examples. It can look any number of ways, but this is one way it could look like. So you could take the Recovery Residence Manager proficiencies self-assessment, and we can provide that here online, and you'll also see it again at the Resident Manager Retreat. From there, an individual may identify their priorities as, one, I want to learn how to communicate better and develop skills around that, because communication is so key when working in a recovery residence. Two, so how do I foster this culture of recovery in the house? This secret sauce and culture that we find across all recovery residences. And then three, oh my gosh, how do I figure out how to do self-care? We can get so burnt out by doing this job. Next, looking at, so how are you going to measure your success? Again, it can look many, many ways, but example would be to journal either nightly or weekly. And this is part of, logging your experience hours, even if you're documenting previous hours. Then, who is going to be your support team around all this? Because you don't want to work in isolation. And so, in this particular example, I put that two peers that I met at the retreat. I think the cool thing about the retreat is you'll get to meet, tens of folks. I think the last retreat we had about 60 folks, all that were recovery residence managers. And oftentimes we don't get to meet other recovery residence managers. And so it's a really great place to meet persons just like you. And then, so how often are you going to review how you're doing compared to your goals? And maybe you say the first Saturday of the month, or maybe it's more frequent than that. It's really up to you. And then finally, how are you going to celebrate if you were doing things well, meeting your identified priorities? And that may look like going out and dancing to celebrate, or posting your successes in the COP, which stands for Community of Practice, which you'll learn more about in this curriculum. Or we're going to have weekly webinars, so you can post your successes in that chat box. So this concept of journaling, I wanted to spend a little bit more time with. Oftentimes residents, we encourage them to journal. Sometimes they're called nightlies, and they can be done in so many different ways, but we're just trying to get individuals to reflect upon their day, to be mindful, and look at how are they moving towards their recovery goals. As a part of a self-development plan for a recovery residence manager, we can use the same concept of journaling for reflection and mindfulness. And it's just a way of moving forward and documenting your progress, identifying opportunities for growth, and identifying a plan on how to move forward. So here is an example of the field experience log. And part of this curriculum, you'll be documenting 500 hours and turning that in. And it can be really, really simple. Make sure that you put your name. For instance, here I've got Miss Rita Jones. And in 3 columns, you can put the date, the middle column, description of activity, and then the last column, the number of hours. And really, this is driven by you. So you can see that Rita was an assistant house manager at one time at a Way Up Sober Living, where she cultivated social model recovery and psychological sense of community. And so those two concepts, social model and sense of community, those are concepts we'll talk more about as part of this curriculum in session 2. But you can see, here she documented 2010 to 2011 and estimated that she probably logged around 250 hours. And really, we're putting this for you to define. Then around Christmas time, you can see December 25th, she practiced motivational interviewing skills while home for the holidays. So it wasn't even in the recovery residence setting, but definitely around family and friends from back home. She got to practice some of the skills that recovery residence managers oftentimes use. And we'll be talking a lot about motivational interviewing, especially in session 3, as well as some at the retreat. Moving down the log, you can see on January 25th, she used appreciative inquiry questions at the house meeting. You'll learn the great tool and skill called appreciative inquiry. That we'll talk a lot about that at the retreat, as well as part of your curriculum packet. You will get a book on appreciative inquiry. On the 6th, she had to administer naloxone to a girl who was overdosing at work, and then took the time to educate everyone around, how did she know to use naloxone? Where did she get it? And you can see she estimated that took about 2 hours. And then also on the 6th, because of that overdose event, she took time to practice self-care and to process that secondary trauma, and took 2 hours out. So you can see it's a simple log, and you start totaling the hours, and you can see that Rita has already logged 260 hours. And once you've logged the 500, you can submit your field experience hours to training@recoverypeople.org. And so I hope that you're getting a sense as, part of this curriculum, we have specifically included opportunities for self-development and ongoing support through the field experience hours and the retreat and the online community of practice. Rather than us prescribing a self or a development plan, we're encouraging you to create your own self-development plan, just like you would be encouraging your residents to develop their own recovery plan, and then together as a household or together as a community of practice and recovery residence managers, we can support each other along this journey. So hopefully that helps. Thanks a lot. Bye.